Birnbach's Always Right with Craig Birnbach and Nick Voll.
Hello, everybody, and welcome into another edition of the podcast we call Birnbach's Always Right. We do that because my name is Craig Birnbach, and we are in, what should we call this place? We need to name this place, this room, Nick.
I'm Nick Voll, by the way.
Yes.
Thanks for that.
I was kind of giving you the opportunity to say your name correctly after our last podcast. But we need a name for this. I don't want it to say cave. Nothing with cave. I hate man cave.
Thank you so much for saying that. We didn't discuss this in advance.
No.
But I hate that phrase. I hate that when they put man in front of anything.
Sure.
Like, it's not a man cave. It's a room in your house that you live in with your wife. You know?
Yeah. I like man witch. I'm not going to lie to you.
Well, but that's.
Well, you said man in front of anything. I like man witch. I'm just making sure that I don't get called out on the man witch later. I like the man witch, but no. And my wife gets so angry because she says if there was going to be a man cave in our house, she would be the one that would want it. Like, and she would build it. You know what I mean? Like I don't care. I had the worst television until a few years ago. I finally got an HD TV. I'm just not that picky. A couch, a remote, and any TV, I'm fine. I don't need anything else. She would design it to have a pool table, dartboard, all that. So it's sexist and silly, and it makes us as a gender sound dumb.
Yeah, if your marriage is so bad that you have to designate a room of your own, maybe you should take a look and have hard conversations with your wife.
I'm not even go there because I'm okay with some separation. My wife,
I'm fine with that too, but I don't need it to be like this barrier. No women allowed. Like, I'm not a 10-year-old boy. This isn't my treehouse.
It's not the Little Rascals.
No.
We don't need to put up a sign that says, no girls here. But the other thing is, I don't like it. We sound dumb. Like we need a man cave. Like we're so stupid. Like we need to be like cavemen. Like, what is that?
Or like it's an excuse, like you it's like somehow weak to want something that pampers you, like whether it's a big TV or a video game or a keg fridge. Like the only way you can acceptably have something that you like is to like classify it as manly as opposed to just a thing that I like, you know?
Right, or just a room that's kind of a cool hangout place.
All right, so we agree.
Right, but we still need a name for this.
Oh, this room. That's what we were talking
yeah,
about?
Yeah, that's exactly. But I don't want it to be like anything cave. Nothing cave. We're not, I got 2 cell phones. I am not a caveman. I got a laptop. I don't want anything to say that I kind of live in a cave because gosh knows I've only camped twice in my life. I could not survive in a cave. I would die within 48 hours or whatever the body, or I might just end it because I wouldn't want to live there. So we'll have to come up with something. If anyone has any suggestions, what we should call Nick's, beautiful home studio, which is also not a good name. And it's kind of weird because it's your house. The podcast is Birnbach's Always Right, but we'll come up with something, or we'll do what most smart men that married great women do. We'll ask our wives, and they'll come up with something better. And I guarantee it won't have cave in it. So one of the suggestions we got, we asked for reactions, was that we should talk less nerdy sports and more about our lives and more personal stuff, which was bizarre to me because I don't think anyone cares about us, but maybe they just want us to be more interesting. So can we do that?
Can we try to be more
Yes,
interesting?
that's
I
the
think
goal.
that's probably a good, no matter what. Yes, let's be more interesting.
There you go. That's what I've been told my whole life. Be more interesting on television, which is great because that's easier than be taller, which I have not managed
or have
to
more
do.
hair, or
that one. That's
be
just
thinner.
Wow. Whoa.
Well,
be thinner?
That's for me.
Oh, I was going to say.
I wasn't projecting onto you.
Nick, I'm short and bald. If I get fat, I'm in a lot of trouble. So I work hard on that. Okay, that's for me and my therapist. But we'll let you in a little bit behind the curtain in the podcast. I have to drive here every day I live in North Portland. Nick lives in Southeast Portland. It's not that far. I've been here dozens of times, and I can't find it. I cannot find it because I'm a moron. I mean, that's what it comes down to. I've been here. I've gotten here successfully before, too. It's not like every time I get lost. I tried a different way to make it a little shorter, and I couldn't find division, and so that gave me about 25 minutes extra in the car, which gave me a lot to think about. And we do a little section called
Birnbach's Reacts.
Usually they're things that Nick can come up with and kind of ask me, but I have my own reactions to stuff that went through my brain while getting so angry at myself for not being able to find Nick's house easily again. And one of the first thoughts I had was I heard a advertisement for the what is it? The St. Paul's Rodeo, right? Is that
St. Paul Rodeo.
St. Paul Rodeo.
Down in very small, very nice St. Paul, Oregon, near Salem, sort of ish.
And it's a big deal.
A very big deal.
Yep. And rodeo is amazing. And I've been to a couple rodeos, and the people that do that are awesome. But there was an advertisement for not just the rodeo, but also for an event that money for every ticket purchased, $1 goes to a fund for cowboys who need medical care. And I thought, this is not something you want your children to grow up and do. When you're advertising not just the event, but you're also saying, hey, please come out to this event. It's awesome. And $1 of your money is going to go to help the cowboys that are in this event that get hurt. That's scary. Agreed?
I suppose. Or it depends what you're in the market for. If you're in the market for some grievous injury, this is like a double, they're guaranteeing something's going to happen that I want to see. Watching car races for the crashes.
Yeah, but they don't advertise, come out and see the Daytona 500, and $1 of your money's going to go to the medical care of these drivers.
But at least the rodeo should get credit for being honest then.
No, I agree. And I also think this is what I kept thinking. They need to pay them more. They need to pay them more and guarantee them insurance. And I think about all these football players suing and for, medical care after. I'm like, that's medical care after. These people are basically needing the medical care now, like right now. Like I'm performing today, and tomorrow I need your money for medical care because they aren't providing it. So, and I don't know a lot about the rodeo, so I don't want to bash it that much, but that was one thing I thought about. And the other thing...
Well, I've actually been to St. Paul and played football in the stadium that they have the rodeo at. When I played in high school, I played 1A football, 8-man football, and so St. Paul High School plays its home games in the rodeo stadium.
That's impressive.
Yeah, it was pretty cool when I was in high school, and for the rodeo, it's a dirt surface, that's what they do the rodeo on. For football, they bring in fresh sod every year, so you're playing on the softest, sweetest...
Wow.
Sod
it's the greatest
in the world.
1A football in the country.
And St. Paul has won multiple state champions, so they're very well done. But we went in there, and it's a small town, and we're like the city kids. We're the small school from the city, and there's some rough fans in St. Paul. They don't hold back on high school kids.
Wow, that's mean.
It was in high school. We were terrible at football.
Oh, I was gonna say
they were very good.
Well, if you're playing in a stadium with fresh sod at 1A and you only got 8, you don't even have enough for 11, you better win.
My team only had 11 players
total. Wow, that's why you played.
We were terrible.
All right, talk about players that don't stink, professional athletes. And the other thing I was thinking about, and I'm sure everyone listening, all 14 of you, have these feelings at times when broadcasters, sometimes people like me, I will say I've probably said some silly things, but sports isms, catchphrases that easily come to your brain and you spit them out, and they just drive me nuts. So much so that I watch sports at my house mostly by myself because my wife doesn't care.
Do you watch them in your man cave?
I do not have a man cave. I have a back room. That's what I have, a back room. Which
sounds shady, actually. But
it does. But there's plenty of light, and the dogs hang out with me. They like all sports, which is important because I have company. But I yell at the TV every time somebody says there's plenty of time. Like down 14. 1 minute and 13 seconds. There's plenty of time. I always yell, there's not plenty of time. There might be enough time, but there's not plenty of time. Down 4, 12 seconds left. There's plenty of time for a comeback. No, that's not plenty of time. 12 seconds is never plenty of time. Like, I don't see any situation where I would say 12 seconds was plenty of time. I would maybe say enough, but I don't, I just can't think of, a situation where I'd say, well, with 12 seconds, that's plenty of time. To do what? And it's not. Nothing. There's not plenty of time for comebacks. There's enough time for comebacks. So that's one that annoys me. So, Nick, you get to go.
I don't have like a sports saying that bothers me as much, at least that I can think of off the top of my head. But it's funny because we talked about this, and I was thinking about it earlier this week. I listened to a local radio show, and I'm not going to name names, but when sports people, specifically sports radio people, don't use their real names. So like, hey, I'm Mutton Chop, and I'm here with the Dumpster. Yeah.
Dumpster's a bad name.
But most of these names are. Like, so I tune into your sports radio talk because I want to hear you smartly analyze the sports news and give me a new perspective on it and make me think about it. But it's difficult for me to take you seriously when you have a name that a 13-year-old thinks is funny.
I got you. That doesn't bother me as much as long as the name was previously established maybe somewhere else, if that makes sense. If you did something else and you got a nickname. I'm just saying, like, if you're a football player or, that has a nickname and then
if you're well known before you go into it. Or the other one, or so along these lines is there's, radio guys who you just use their last name, and it drives me crazy too, because it's like this bro thing where like, oh, I'll call my buddies by their last name. Yo, what's up, Birnbach?
But that's like every friend I have.
That's not. It's weird. Maybe it's an East Coast thing.
It is definitely an East Coast thing because I still call my friend when we talk. I say Merrill, a while. Those are my like best friends growing up.
Use their last names.
Yes, absolutely, all the time. And people say Birnbach or nicknames. We'll have my friend Jason is Jason Krause. We call always JK.
Well, nicknames I get, but you wouldn't go on the air and. I don't know.
No, my people will call. We have other weird nicknames that we have for each other, but White, my buddy Danny White. He just calls and says, "Hey, it's White." Like he says, "Hey, it's White." I don't say it's Birnbach. I will say that I say it's "Hey, it's Craig." But if I'm talking to Jason and I'll say I talked to Danzig 10 minutes ago, and that's his last name. So maybe it is an East Coast thing and this podcast is called Birnbach's Always Right. It's not called Craig Birnbach's Always Right, Nick.
Well, but I don't casually call you Birnbach. We don't casually just say.
That's true, and you're right. It might be a region thing. Another one that I hate is listening to golf on the way over here.
I think we all hate that.
No, I don't.
Oh,
golf on the radio.
There's another
right.
part of this. Sorry.
It just proves I'll listen to golf on the radio. I will. But when they say, so and so's leading by 10 strokes, but anybody could make a comeback or anybody could win this. This is anybody's race or anybody's, no, it's never anybody's. It's never anybody's. There's never a field. There's never a league where every team has a chance to win a title. And especially when they say it halfway through the season. No, it's not. It's never true. It's never true. And it's just easy to say, well, this is any man's race, or this is any team could win. No, it's not true. And it annoys me. And usually I'll give an example of which team can't win. If they sadly, for the last 10 years, I've said when they say, well, anybody can win in the East. No, the Knicks can't win in the East. They just can't. That's just how I felt most of the time. That in the last 10 years, I'm like, the Knicks will not make it to the NBA Finals, cannot win the East. So those are the things that make you mad when you're already mad at yourself because you can't find your friend's house that you've been to, dozens and dozens of times because you don't have the address to put in your GPS because the first few times you came with your wife who can get here easily and tell you how to get here. And that's what's pathetic. And as my wife always tries to test me on how to get places, I have to remind her I'm 40 plus years old. We've only been married for a year and a half. I'm like, I did get places before we were married. And she always answers, I'm not sure how. And I have no good comeback for that because a lot of times I'm like, well, the subway map was pretty easy and I memorized that. So.
In the news.
Speaking of, we talked a little bit about the NBA. We are in a situation where the New York Knicks, the team I just talked about, is once again transitioning. They have a new president in Phil Jackson, and now they have a new coach in Derek Fisher, another guy. It's the trend now. Hire a guy that's never coached before and assume that's going to work. And it's worked pretty well with some guys. Doc Rivers has been awesome. Mark Jackson, even though he took some time off. Jason Kidd started abysmally in Brooklyn and finished strong. Now the Knicks have gotten Derek Fisher. Is he a guy, Nick, you think can instantly become a respectable coach in the NBA?
I'm always surprised when any of them are successful in that when I think of basketball, I think of guys you need motivational skills, people skills. You also need the X's and O's. So I'm always surprised when those guys are able to step in and do anything on the X's and O's side when that's not how they've been approaching basketball necessarily. But obviously, like you mentioned, it does work for some guys. And I think if it's going to work for anybody, Derek Fisher could be a guy it works for. He's a smart guy. He's well respected. He's played on championship caliber teams. I think he could be a success. I don't think the problem with Derek Fisher being a success in New York is anything to do with Derek Fisher. I think Mike Woodson wasn't a great coach, but he wasn't a terrible coach. I think New York's problems run much, much deeper.
They run really deep, and or right out in front because the owner, Dolan's just been murder and crushed my soul time and time again. I mean, you talk about coaches that haven't succeeded in New York. Some people forget that Larry Brown was there, who I think is the best X's and O coach in the world, and he couldn't last a year because of the Dolan situation. You hope it's fixed with the Phil Jackson. I'm never one to ever really group everybody together. I think that people love to do that because it's easy. But yeah, I think about the people I know and jobs that they can be given or how they've succeeded in certain situations. And I don't think Derek Fisher and Jason Kidd are at all alike, other than they played in the NBA. But Jason Kidd is one of the greatest of all time. He's a guy that's, no one taught, he wasn't Derek Fisher in the sense that he wasn't a role player. Mm-hmm. He wasn't a guy that was motivating on the bench because he was always in the game. They called him a coach on the court, Derek Fisher, a coach on the court, but also in the locker room because he won 5 rings, but he wasn't a star on any of those teams.
He was a starter on most of those teams.
Yes, though. But Kobe Bryant was next to him, and he played.
Shaq and
I'm just saying you play point guard when Kobe Bryant's next to you. How much point guard are you really playing? You know what I mean? Like
you're spotting up for 3 is what
you're doing what you do, and you do it great, and you won 5 rings, and you were the president of the Players Association, and that takes guts and it takes political diplomacy. So I just think that every situation is different in the sense that I think Steve Kerr can be successful. I'm not surprised that Mark Jackson was successful as an X's and O's guy. I'm also not surprised that it didn't work off the court and in the locker room at times because of who Mark Jackson is. Now, the great thing as a Knicks fan about Derek Fisher is nobody says anything bad about him. Nobody, and he did something that, Ryan Ludlow, who gives us the nice voicer tracks to our wonderful intros, he holds a grudge. I think it's fair to say that, right? I think it's fair to say that if you wrong Orion 12 years ago, or if somebody does something 12 years ago that Orion didn't like, it's hard to recover. So Derek Fisher, you do remember, asked to be traded from Utah so that he could get better medical care for his daughter who had an eye issue.
I remember this.
And then he went to another team.
Yeah.
That did not make Orion. Orion says that, basically called BS on it, and it forever holds that as a grudge. And I will say he did do that, but no one ever brings it up, which says to me that was either stuff we don't know about, why it worked out. There was a hospital where she needed to go, or it was out of character for Derek Fisher, or he had great reason to do it. So I don't hold it against it, but Orion's really the only person that I know that says, brings that up, and it's a good point. So I think that Derek Fisher will be a decent coach. It's whether or not he'll have a decent team.
He will not.
Thank you. And the big question there is, because it gets us right into what we were talking about before we started this, is Carmelo Anthony. There are now rumors of a Big 4 scenario with the Miami Heat, because Carmelo has said he's going to opt out, become a free agent, basically spit in the face of New York Knicks fans in a $22 million contract that would have been guaranteed. I'm not bitter, not angry.
Oh, he'll get a huge contract. He doesn't need that money.
That's a lot. That's a lot. He can't get as much. $30 million less if he doesn't sign with the Knicks. $30 million. He shrugged. Nick Ball shrugged at $30 million like,
He's going to get a $95 million contract. I don't think he's going to sweat $30 million if he thinks he can win a ring.
Yeah, I think that people who say that are crazy, because there's never been anyone that I know that turned down $30 million.
But to win a ring, he already has $150 million.
Who has done that?
Who's turned down big money?
Who's turned down $30 million? Or $10 million? Or $15?
I don't know how much money LeBron and
like
Wade.
$1 and $2 million here and there. They're all getting paid very close. They just didn't get max. They were all max guys that didn't get max, but they're all making big money. They didn't turn down $30 million.
So if I understand you correctly, you think he should take the $30 million because of the money and sacrifice the opportunity to win, because you're not going to win in New York.
I'm not saying what he should do. I'm saying it's never. People shrug at it and say how simple it is to turn down $30 million to win a ring, and I say that's not easy. And I don't know anyone who's done it. Like, I don't know a player that turned down $30 million to go after a championship. And also, the one thing that people forget is people that are turning down $30 million extra dollars are awesome at what they do, and they think they can win championships without having to, buy in, to get big time help from others. So I don't, look, if he does it, I will give him huge amounts of credit, because he will, to me, be the first athlete that ever turned down that kind of money, $30 million to go get a ring, and I will root against him every single day, because he left the Knicks, and also I don't want the Heat to win anymore. But I just don't see it being that easy, and it amazes me how, like, you just shrugged it off, but you're one of the majority, because people are always like, oh, it's only $30 million. He's already made $100 million. Like this, that happens all the time. And that there are CEOs in the country that will just say, 30 million, no big deal. I'll go to that company because I like that neighborhood better. No, people take what they can get because it's also an ego thing.
I mean, that's a good point, but I obviously Carmelo has a huge ego, but
Yeah.
I think it is impressive that he's willing to potentially put some of that aside and go somewhere
We'll
else.
see.
I don't think we should ever criticize somebody for wanting to win and taking the steps necessary to win.
And he hasn't done it yet. So
No, and he hasn't. But I mean, it sounds like he's considering it anyway.
He's definitely considering it, but he's also considering it to be wanted. That's what he wants, because of his ego. I think he wants them to beg, and I don't know if he's worth begging. I think he was great. I hate the criticism that Carmelo got, because I thought he was fantastic on a bad team last year. He was rock solid. People say, oh, he doesn't pass the ball. Well, you know what? I wouldn't pass the ball to Ray Felton either. I wouldn't pass the ball to Anthony Hardaway Jr. either. Tim Hardaway Jr. Whatever.
Tim Hardaway.
Yeah. Whatever. I wouldn't pass him the ball either. I wouldn't give the rock up, if I'm Carmelo Anthony, to really anybody on the Knicks, because I have a better chance of scoring. They needed him to rebound. He got 10 a game. No, he's not a playmaker. He's the best scoring player in the NBA right now. I mean, like, he could score at will, and it's amazing.
Kevin Durant may have that.
Yeah, he's pretty darn good.
They're
he's
both
pretty
close,
good.
though.
But I'm just saying he can score, and he could score as well as anyone in the world, and that's what he did for the Knicks, and that's what they paid him for. And they didn't pay him to pass the ball to guys that were inferior to him, and they didn't give him a guy who could pass the ball to other people. So, and he didn't have a coach. You say Mike Woodson wasn't terrible. He's offensively a terrible coach. It was awful what the offensive sets that they ran, other than give it to Carmelo and get out the way. So, I'm not mad at Carmelo. I like Carmelo. I want him to re-sign. I just think it's amazing. People say, oh, he'll take a huge hit to his salary, and so will they all, just because LeBron loves to say how he took less money. He didn't take a max deal, but he didn't take $30 million less. So it ain't going to happen anyway, except for one. The only way I think it can happen is if Chris Bosh decides to opt out and leaves a big hole there where Carmelo can go in there and almost make the max, and Bosh says, I want to go somewhere else. Because I don't think there's any way that four of them are going to get their salaries under the cap, which, at a level which is acceptable to them. But and I'm not going to be heartbroken if Carmelo leaves. The Knicks. It's not. We got to restart anyway. You know what I mean? Like, so it's nice to have that piece and say, okay, we've got that guy. He's 30. He's not 25. So it's not like we're not losing a Kevin Durant. You know what I mean? Like, if Oklahoma City were to lose Kevin Durant after next year. So it won't break my heart. The problem is there's no patience left for Knicks fans. There's very little patience in New York as a sports fan anyway. And we basically been told next year's a wash, but in 2 years we're going to compete for a championship. And I look at that team and I'm like, my God, we got to start from scratch. And it can happen. I mean, they did in Miami pretty much. They had Dwayne Wade and then they built on that. So it'd be nice to have Carmelo and build on that. So I think Fisher has a chance to succeed, but I do agree with you. We might not know if he's a good coach or not, depending on what happens.
Yeah, they'll need to give him time.
Yep, and hopefully I will somehow be proven wrong by the Knicks, and at some point when someone says anyone can win the East, I'll be able to say, yeah, the Knicks could win the East. This is the team that can't.
The big topic.
Well, let's talk World Cup.
Yeah, because you love soccer.
You characterize me as someone who doesn't like soccer. I don't dislike soccer. I just don't like soccer. Like
That's what I just said.
no, but when you say I don't like, I'm ambivalent. It's cool. It's a fun sport to watch, but I can't invest in it. But I like the World Cup. It comes around once every 4 years. It's like the Olympics. I get engaged because I like seeing the faces, and it's like it's a big deal, and I can tell that, and I enjoy that. And so the U.S., again, probably doesn't have a chance to win. And amazingly, their coach, Jurgen Klinsmann, said it's not realistic that the USA can win the World Cup.
That he did.
The coach said that.
Yeah, it's odd. And you wrote on your notes, is that un-American?
That's your note that you sent to me, and I
wow,
just cut and pasted it.
And it's funny because I heard people say that it's un-American, and I think it's I don't think the attitude's un-American in the sense that Americans are unrealistic about things. Like as a Knicks fan, I just said I knew we weren't going to win a championship, but if my coach said it, it would hurt. It hurt me, and I'd be mad. Jurgen Klinsmann's German. He won a World Cup as a player and a coach. So he says it, and the reaction is some people are mad. Like, how could you ever say that? As a coach and a leader, how could you tell your players you don't think they can win and then go in the locker room? And then the other part of me says, how could, if he said that they could win the World Cup, most people wouldn't believe him anyway. So I think it's kind of an un-American thing for a coach to say. Like, leaders don't say that in America. They don't say we can't win. We've worked in newsrooms. Never had a news director say, I think we could be third. I think we could be a solid third. They always say we need to win. We need to win, which is being number one and or change how we're winning. Like we've all been in newsrooms where it says, okay, we're third, but we're number one in this demographic. Like figure out a way to say something positive so that would continue the positive attitude and therefore that would lead to success. I think that Klinsmann's it's an honest answer. Like, no, we're not better than Brazil. We're not going to beat Brazil. We're not. I'm been with the German national team. I know you're not better than them. I was with that team. Come on, you're not better than the Netherlands. And odds are, we're not going to win. But he didn't say odds are. He says it's not realistic. Same language, same meaning, but the wording I think blew people away a little bit.
Is it like a masterclass in psychology? He's saying, you guys, we can't do it. And it's like motivating them to be like, maybe we can, coach.
No, that's the American.
I think prove you wrong.
Right. I think that exactly is the American attitude. Like the other thing you can do is, be a hater. And people stand up, because everyone wants to, well, if you say we can't win, then we're going to win. I mean, you cover high school athletics. I cover high school athletics. I can't tell you how many times I've interviewed high school athletes at every level. We're talking from girls tennis to guys football, where they say no one thought we could do this, and I'm always like, name someone. Name someone that said you couldn't do this. Like I've been at volleyball championships and they said no one thought we could do this. Who said you couldn't do it? Like name the person. Like I wanted one name.
My Aunt Barb said we couldn't do it.
But that is an American attitude like that, and coaches do use it. Like hey, we're only freshmen. No one thinks we can win it. Or I'm like who? And like teams that won 4 titles in a row. No one thought we could win 4 titles in a row. What are you talking about? Well, of course they did. You won 3 in a row. Like, who are these doubters out there? I think, but that's like an American thing. Like, that's how you learn a lot of stuff, as you well know, is you learn what attitudes are when you get to cover youth sports and high school sports, because you realize that this is what's going on. Twitter's a great tool. We use it for our high school show, the K2 Blitz. You should watch Friday nights football season. But
if we're going to plug things, I can plug. If you live in Clark County, you should watch Ford Sports. We do blah, 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 blah.
You should
Friday
absolutely.
Nights, and I'm on TV. It's terrible. Continue.
But I'm saying, like, you see that you get to, and some things do surprise you. And I have seen, since I've come out here, do you not hear that? Like, no one thought we could do this. And I'm always like, That's just not true. Like, who's feeding you this garbage that there are doubters out there for your, for your lacrosse team? Like, like, who's saying you can't do this? Like, I don't get it. So, but I don't think Klinsman's doing that. I think Klinsman's like, you asked me a question, I'm answering it because that's what I do. And he also bashed, he cut Landon Donovan, the America's all-time leading goal scorer in international play. And then he said about the Lakers and Kobe Bryant. Did you see this?
I did not.
He said, it's such an American thing, like to pay Kobe Bryant all that money, even though he's past his prime.
Yeah, the $25 million a year, something like that for the next 3 years.
Something ridiculous. He's like, why would you do that? You can't. He's not worth that money, like that. And he said that's an American thing to do. Like, you pay a player all that money for what he did before, not for what he could do now. And in soccer, there's transfers, there's sales, there's it's not as forgiving. And I think that's true too. Like, why would you pay Kobe Bryant the most amount of money a player can make in the NBA when he is no longer the best player in the NBA, other than you fear what the PR hit will be if you let him go? And his point is, like, you should pay people for what they're worth at that time. So I think this guy's just a real honest guy. And I wasn't happy that he cut Landon Donovan, because I think Landon Donovan can still help this team from a tactical point of view. And also, I want soccer to grow in America. And I think that having Landon Donovan, the only player that, if you took 10 random people and you said name one soccer player.
David Beckham.
American. Landon Donovan's probably going to be your guy. You know what I mean? Like, if they can name him.
Lexi Lawless.
He is now a broadcaster. Went to Rutgers in the great state of New Jersey, mind you. Not from New Jersey, but
I know that he's not active anymore. I'm just saying, like, because people don't know,
And he was famous for his hair. He was for his hair. He was a defender. He was a defender who was good, but not great. Landon Donovan was great. Landon Donovan might
truly
be
internationally considered a great player.
Maybe the greatest American soccer player of all time. You know what I mean? And
which would make him like the fifth best, or 10th, 100th best
right,
NBA player of all time from Europe.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, but I'm just saying. So it did hurt my feelings that he cut Landon Donovan, because for multiple reasons. One, I think Landon's still good enough to play on this team. He has the experience, which is huge in World Cup, and it gives us the guy to go to, and getting to cover him. He's a great guy. I mean, here's a guy that is the all-time leading scorer in America history, and you talk to that guy, he will do every interview. And here's something that a lot of people don't know about him: speaks Spanish fluently. And I often, in my job at K2, we have Univision, and I sometimes with the soccer players will get Spanish interviews that I do not understand. I always say, I come back and Enrique, who I work with, is like, was it good? I'm like, I don't know. You could have called my mom a name, but it sounded like all right to me. But Landon Donovan, here he is, the most famous American soccer player. I ask him, hey, can I ask you some questions in English, and will you answer them in Spanish? And he says yes. Like, no hesitation, and does it. And it doesn't sound like a big thing, but I promise you, he could big time me and be like, well, A, no. B, well, if you can't ask them in Spanish, I don't want to answer in Spanish. Or C, Spanish is my second language, I don't feel comfortable with that. Does not. Says yes, does it, because he's promoted soccer his entire career. And the other reason why I like him, he's about my height. And he's awesome, which just, it kind of crushes my soul. A guy who played soccer his whole life and wanted to use the height thing as a crutch. And then the greatest American soccer player is about an inch taller than me. So,
Final thoughts.
all right. For people out there that don't watch the World Cup, have never watched the World Cup, you're probably not listening to us. But I'm talking to you, Mom, because she does listen. Watch the World Cup. You will get caught up in it, because as Nick said, it is an experience unlike any other sporting event. So it's a beautiful thing. For us in America, football is the biggest thing in the world in America. We know that. That's a stupid thing I just said. The biggest thing in the world in America. But
a very American thing to say.
Yes, exactly, because it revolves around us. But maybe, I don't know if he was the great, Vince Lombardi, pretty much the greatest football coach of all time, but Chuck Noll, just a legend, a great coach, and the first coach whose name I knew probably as a kid, as I was a young kid in the 70s when the Steelers won 4 Super Bowls in a 6-year period, and Chuck Noll was that coach, and passed away at 82 years old, and that's one of those things that hits you in the gut a little bit when I'm 43 now, and like that was the first coach that I knew the name of, because that was the first Super Bowls that I don't know if I watched them, but I heard of them, and he really great coaching tree and not a loudmouth, you know what I mean? Like or a guy like Bill Belichick who gave attitude. Everyone loved Chuck Noll and said great things about him. So need to just mention that Chuck Noll passed away and really helped football grow a great deal, and Pittsburgh became a franchise. Like a real football. Like we know the Pittsburgh Steelers they're a big time sports franchise, and Chuck Noll did a lot to do that. And though I'm not a Steelers fan, I'm a Giants fan. I will always respect Chuck Noll and remember like that he kind of pushed me toward the love of sports.
I think my final thoughts for today would be I've been watching more baseball, and I think it's finally time for us to support the Mariners a little bit. I think they're finally not terrible, and I'm really enjoying watching them play. I think Jones in the outfield has given him a nice little spark. Kyle Seager is clearly a quality Major League Baseball player. Robinson Cano is finally starting to be Robinson Cano a little bit, I think. And so watch the team, watch the Mariners, enjoy it. Summer's here.
Show up too. Gosh,
yeah, go to those games. And Safeco is such a great place to see a game. It's worth the 3-hour drive up, 3-hour drive back. Stop in the middle at Norma's and get shakes and burgers.
Oh, I have to do that then.
That's pretty good.
I love shakes. I love burgers. I don't love the Mariners, but I do watch them.
But they're worth watching finally, and I appreciate.
They're not boring as put a bad word in.
They're winning. They have a winning record in June.
Yes, and they're not ridiculously boring. I like Jones. He's from New York, which is a good thing. Cano is a Yankee, $240 million. Don't think he was worth it, but he was worth it in the sense that Nick Voll is now watching. So but I mean that's the key. That's what they wanted, and I hope they do better because. I'm shocked because Safeco, I got to, when I got here 7 years ago, that was one of the first things I wanted to do. It's gorgeous. It's beautiful. And I look at those attendance figures and I'm just shocked that people don't go in Seattle. And it's not a fun drive, 3 hours, but it's not awful. And you are guaranteed to be able to see a game because they have the roof if it rains. So have you ever seen a game in the rain? With the roof?
Oh yeah, for sure. I've been to probably a couple dozen Safeco games.
I want to every time I go, because it's the summer in the Northwest and it doesn't rain. Sorry, East Coast, doesn't rain. I've never had the roof closed. I want it to close. Like I'm rooting for rain because I'd like to see a game. I've never seen a baseball game in a dome. I've seen football games in domes, but never a baseball game.
So you were. I've been here long enough. I've seen lots of games in the dome, in the Kingdom, but
yes.
It's better in the open air. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, and I would have loved to see a game in the Kingdom just so I can say how horrible it was.
It was horrible.
That's what every Mariner fan ever says, and any Astro fan when you talk about the Astrodome, they're like, it was horrible.
There was a point in my life where I'd never seen a baseball game outside because in 1987 I saw the Twins in the Metrodome.
Oh wow!
And then we moved to out here, and then I saw the Mariners, probably 20 Mariners games in the Kingdom. And the first time I went to a game at Safeco, it was like a revelation.
Now, outdoor baseball, that's the way it was made. I like the fact that they're making domes now that the roofs are retractable because I do not think, Tampa Bay, that's awful. Watching it on carpet where the ball can hit a roof, it's awful. So, and I know it. Well, it's because what Nick already's learned. Birnbach's always right.